having a budget is essential to a business, but things don't always turn out the way that we plan. And so a static budget just budgets our resources at one level of production. Flexible budget recognizes the fact that we may have more production or less production than anticipated. They're hard to read about, but they really aren't that complicated. Okay, let's pretend I work for a company and I'm in charge of a factory, and we originally thought during the month of January we're going to produce 10,000 units. So here's my budget. I was supposed to spend $480,000. Turns out I spent $520,000. So my boss comes in and he's mad as hell, trying to figure out why I spent more than I was supposed to. Well, it turns out I actually made 11,000 units this month. We were very productive. So we're going to have to redo the budget. We're going to have to create a flexible budget based on the actual output of 11,000 units. And the most important part of flexible budgeting is recognizing that we have some variable costs like materials, labor, and variable overhead, and some fixed costs. So let's go back and redo the budget. Create a flexible budget based on 11,000 units. Well, it looks like my budget for direct materials was $220,000 for 10,000 units, or $22 a unit. If I'd budgeted $22 a unit for 11,000 units, my budget for materials would have been $242,000. What about labor? I budgeted $80,000 for 10,000 units, so that's $8 a unit. My budget for 11,000 units then would have been $88,000. All right, why don't you pause this video and see if you can figure out what the budget would have been at 11,000 units for variable overhead. I hope you got it. $40,000 divided by 10,000 units means we did budget $4 a unit. $4 a unit times 11,000 units means my budget would have been $44,000. Then the only tricky thing is fixed overhead. Obviously, fixed overhead is a fixed cost. So no matter what my units were, my budget should have been $140,000. So now we have the flexible budget at $514,000. So now I can go back to my boss and say, look, boss, the flexible budget would have had us spending $242,000 on materials. I only spent $240,000. So that's a $2,000 favorable variance. I spent less than I would have spent under the budget. The revised budget, the flexible budget for labor was $88,000. We spent $91,000. So that's a $3,000 unfavorable variance. The budget for variable overhead was $44,000. We spent $45,000. So that's a $1,000 unfavorable variance. And the fixed overhead, we were supposed to spend $140,000. We spent $144,000. So that's a $4,000 unfavorable variance. So if you total it all up, boss, I'm only $6,000 over budget rather than the $40,000 that you originally thought. So the flexible budget simply goes back and recreates the budget at the actual level of production. Or another use of the flexible budget might be at the beginning of the year to recognize that there are various possible levels of production in my factory, and to prepare a flexible budget at those levels, 10,000 units, 11, 12, 13, and then whatever I end up producing, I can just look in the appropriate column to see if I'm on budget or not. But whether you go back at the end of the month and reconstruct the budget for the actual level of production, or in advance you prepare various budgets at different levels of production, the flexible budget flexes, it changes, it's better than a static budget in the sense that it gives us our costs at different levels of production. And that's all there is to flexible budgets.